G'day guys and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showcasing the Blueflame Ice Explosive Titan. This build is designed to set off chain explosions when we are hitting packs of mobs that will clear the screen and will also allow us to stun lock and freeze map bosses, allowing us to deal damage relatively safely. In this video, there will be timestamps for each section, so feel free to jump between them. We will be covering gear, skills, passives, as well as some extra gameplay at the end. Before I continue, I do want to say a big thank you to everyone who has come through over the last 2 weeks. We have gotten a lot of new subscribers and a lot of new viewers. Our latest build video did hit 20,000 views, which is absolutely incredible. So a big thank you for that. If you do enjoy my content, I believe 99% of viewers are not subscribed, so please hit that subscribe button if you have gained any help out of our videos. It really does help us out a lot. Let's get started with the gear. The gear is the most important part of this build. We are using 3 unique items to maintain this build, one being rather expensive, the others being very, very cheap. The first item we want to acquire is the pole ring. I am not going to try and pronounce that. This ring allows us to shatter enemies when they are chilled, as if they are frozen. This is absolutely massive for us as a warrior with a mace. We're not going to be doing a lot of elemental damage with our main clear ability, but we'll be doing enough to apply the chill effect. We will also be applying a stun effect, which then chains and creates very large explosions that will spread across the entire map, killing everything. So we want to grab this ring. At the moment it is going for 1 divine. I believe for this entire build at level 75 it will cost around 3 divines, 2 to 3 divines depending on what gear you do choose. The very important part of this build and the reason we can clear so effectively, we need this ring. Moving on to the next unique item that comes online, and that is the Cloak of Flames. The Cloak of Flames allows us to have a very effective tank. Now, unfortunately, at this current time, the stats for armor is pretty abysmal. Armor just does not cut it when we are taking damage in the end game. So we want to mitigate that damage another way, and that is where Cloak of Flame comes into play. The main attribute on this bad boy here is 40% of physical damage taken as fire damage. This is incredible because we are able to increase our maximum fire resistances to higher than 80% using our jewel sockets and some passives in the warrior region. That means we can get pretty tanky. Definitely not as tanky as some crazy energy shield builds out there, but we are tanky enough to do the job, and that is what matters. Next is the final unique to come online. This comes online at level 33. This is the Blueflame braces and the what the build is named after. The most important stat on this one is 100% of fire damage is converted to cold damage. We are going to be doing a very large chunk of fire damage with our attacks, and this is then converted to cold damage, which can apply a chill and a freezing effect. Very big stuff. Now for the weapon, you are going to want something that has a very high physical roll, because our main single target ability is Perfect Strike, which converts 80% of the physical damage we deal to fire damage, which then is converted to cold damage using the Blueflame braces. Getting extra cold damage on your mace is also important because that will allow our other ability, Leap Slam, to have additional cold damage, and that allows us to then multiply that cold damage into even more effective clear. Let's go on to the skills now. Actually, before we do, the other gear is really just fill your resistances and use whatever gear you want to use, as long as our resistances are capped, and you might want to also look for some chaos resistance because that is going to help you in the long run. You can use energy shield gear, you can use evasion gear or armor gear. The only downside is being what the attribute you choose to pump in, and of course we do use maces, so we are going to require a high level of strength anyway, so things like attributes could get rather difficult if you do not choose armor as your base. Moving on to skills, we have Leap Slam. Leap Slam is our main clear ability. Leap Slam will allow us to consume fully broken armor, causing even more stun buildup. This also is our main ability to keep enemies stunned or apply a heavy stun. 2 to 4 hits on a boss mob will stun them with this setup. This allows us to then chain into a perfect hit or perfect strike, dealing large amounts of damage. We have Leap Slam connected to Cold Infusion as our first support. This is obviously very important to allow the cold damage to get out there, allow the chill to be applied, and then the explosion done by Herald of Ice when things are shattered, and things are shattered when we kill them on chills. So basically, we apply a chill, the chill causes a shatter, the shatter causes an explosion with Herald of Ice. That is our clear setup. It is very effective. Next on, I have the Ice Bite support. Attacks gain 35% of damage as extra cold damage for 3 seconds on freezing an enemy with supported skills. This won't come online until we start hitting with a larger amount of cold damage. Usually if we can get a weapon with cold damage, we'll start having a chance to freeze enemies. And that is absolutely wonderful because we get extra damage, and this extra damage helps us clear faster. Next, we have Momentum. After moving at least 2 meters during a single use of a supported skill, the rest of that use deals 40% more damage. Now, this is a weird one. So you need to have a certain travel form. So if you do that, you are not going to get your momentum. However, if you do this, you may notice that there's a green power-up effect on your character. That is how you tell if momentum has been applied. Generally, while we are mapping, we're just going to want to hold down our Leap Slam and just aim it as far away as possible. Because our AoE is very large, we will be able to hit enemies even if they're chasing us. And because we also have Mana Leech, and we are getting some regeneration from Clarity, mana is not going to be too much of an issue while we are mapping. Going back, I also have this linked to Overpowered. This should be right there in terms of priority. So we get Cold Infusion first, Overpowered second, Momentum third, and then Ice Bite third, in order of priority. The reason we use Overpowered is because, as I mentioned before, Leap Slam is our primary use of stun. The way this works with mobs is if we don't instantly wipe out the entire pack, 99% of the time, the pack will be stunned. Once an enemy is stunned, they take even more damage due to our passive tree, which we'll get to soon. That means, generally, if the enemy survives the first hit, they're not going to survive the second because of the multipliers we are getting while they are stunned. It also applies to bosses and how we can deal so much damage when they are in a heavy stun state. Moving down to our primary single target damage dealer. This is Perfect Strike. A normal hit from Perfect Strike is relatively fast. It looks awkward and it feels awkward, but that is not the primary way we are going to be using it. The normal hit will hit for a 40% of physical damage as fire damage, which of course turns into cold damage with our gloves. But what we really want here is the Perfect Strike. Converted 80% of physical damage to fire damage, increases the strike range, and always ignites. We take use of this ignite with one of the passives, which allows us to do more damage if an enemy is ignited. And you also may have noticed that the attack damage is at 1026% at a level 16 gem. That is absolutely insane. With the stun damage multipliers in effect, we can melt bosses with this ability alone. And because the cold buildup is so high from the 80% turned into cold from fire, we also have a high chance of freezing the enemy. So when it comes to bosses, we usually go in with the stuns, two or three times rather. Then they are stunned. We then pop down our curse, we pop our infernal cry to empower, we pop our hammer of the gods, and then we just start perfect striking until they are unstunned. If all goes well, we will then apply the freeze, allowing us to continue with the perfect strike until they are dead. Very, very effective. In order of priority, we have cold penetration, window of opportunity, martial tempo, and heft. Cold penetration is pretty self-explanatory. It allows us our cold damage to penetrate 30% of their cold resistances. Great stuff when it's facing bosses. The next one is window of opportunity, which means 25% shorter perfect timing window. Perfect timing means that flash we see, we need to release the attack on that flash to deal its maximum damage. This does decrease that window, making it harder to use, but it attacks with 50% more damage, which is insane. To counteract the attack speed, because this is a relatively slow attack, we want it to be a little bit faster, we go ahead and put in martial tempo. So instead of 2 perfect strikes on a boss mob, we can throw out 3 before the stun is over. Then we have heft as the final priority. Heft gives 30% more maximum physical damage. That means this can do a lot more physical damage, which then is converted into cold damage, which increases the freeze rate. Next, we have hypothermia. This is our curse ability. We are going to be using heightened curse because we are going to be using the very lowest level of hypothermia. Because we are a warrior, we don't want to pump our points into intellect or dexterity, so we opt for the lowest level of hypothermia. We link it to heightened curse, which allows us to increase the power of the curse substantially. Then I personally link it to cursed ground. Don't have to have it on cursed ground, I just prefer it this way because it allows me to pop a bottleneck if I want to, and it just places. Anything that walks on this area will just be cursed automatically. Next, we have Infernal Cry. As I mentioned before, Infernal Cry is our damage booster before we drop our combo. We are going to want to drop Infernal Cry the moment an enemy is stunned to empower our next attack. If the enemy happens to be a boss, that is going to be empowered 5 times. So empowered attacks gain 25% of fire damage, of damage as fire damage per 5 power of enemy, ranging up to 100%. We will get 5 power if the enemy is a boss, making us deal 100% of damage as fire damage. So gain 100% of fire damage, which of course then gets turned into cold damage, which of course is what we're going for. I have that linked to premeditation to increase the overall damage, and raging cry just to add a little bit of rage and damage once we pop that. Next we have Hammer of the Gods. This is just kind of like a fun skill. It's not really key to the build, but it's fun to have, and it's got to be one of the coolest abilities that mace wielders get. So yeah, may as well use it. So we'll go over that combo again with the single target boss. We go in, we attack 2 to 3 times to build up that stun meter. Once the stun meter is up, we want to pop down a curse, pop down Infernal Cry, and then drop the Hammer of the Gods on them while following up with our Perfect Strike. That combination there is going to deal absolutely obscene amounts of damage if we can time it right. But due to the cooldown, we're not going to be able to use Hammer of the Gods every time we stun, because we're going to be stunning pretty damn fast. So it is a fun ability to add to the rotation. It's not overall necessary. We have that linked to Heavy Swing, which decreases attack speed by 10%, but deals 35% more melee physical damage, so basically just more damage, easy stuff there. Less skill effect duration on fast forward allows the hammer to come down faster, and Fist of War just ancestrally boosts the hammer once every 6 seconds, and given this is a 24-second cooldown, basically every attack is ancestrally boosted, which is amazing. Onto our spirit skills. We have Herald of Ice. Herald of Ice is the second most important ability on our kit. We want to get Herald of Ice straight away, because this is how we use our explosions. As we mentioned before, when the enemy is chilled, they can shatter. With Herald of Ice, when they're shattered, they explode into cold damage, which then changes to the next enemy and the next enemy and the next enemy, allowing us to do absolutely insane clear. I have this linked to Cannibalism and Clarity. As you level through the campaign and grab Spirit, it is great to grab these two just for some extra sustain. And as you'll see when I am mapping or during the gameplay footage, you'll see my health dip, and then when we clear a pack, you'll see it just go straight back to top. That is because of Cannibalism. A very, very good ability, and this helps us with our mana regeneration, so easy win there. Herald of Ice is at a very low level. I believe it is the lowest level. I could be wrong, but you do not need to have a high level Herald of Ice. Just the base version was fine, because we are only using it for that explosion proc. Our last spirit ability, which you should get literally the last time you get spirit in the campaign, which is, I believe, is the Witch on Act 3 Cruel. Grab this. This is essentially just a straight up buff to everything we do. Enemies in your presence have a 22% reduced elemental ailment threshold. That means it's easier to chill and it's easier to freeze. Big wins for our build. They also have a 23% reduced stun threshold, which means they're also easier to stun, which ties into our build incredibly well. Absolutely insanely well. Alright, I'm going to now cover the passive skill tree. Let's have a look. For our ancestry, or ascendancy rather. Yeah, for our ascendancy, we just want to go straight to crushing impacts. Crushing blows decrease the threshold where we can hit a heavy stun. So basically it means we don't have to deal as much stun damage to proc that heavy stun. Absolutely massive for us. Next, for our second, we go into Surprising Strength, which 40% more damage against heavily stunned enemies. This is one of the bigger damage boosts we get, and the reason why we run our combo after a stun. This allows us to deal substantial damage. Now I'm going to go through all the nodes and how you would level them and what you should be leveling first. So this is going to be a rather long explanation. We are just going to take the top row and then bottom on that to get our increased stun build up. Straight away we have a very good basis of stun, and that should allow us to get through Act 1 quite easily. We are going to continue on the top path, grabbing Smash. This increases damage against heavy stunned enemies. Now this actually stacks with this bad boy over here and this bad boy down here. That means we have a whopping 100% extra damage on stunned enemies. Then we will double back and get Reverberating Impact, which increases the area effect of our attacks. We don't really care about the breaking of the armor because it doesn't come into play too much. Obviously will come into play because we do break armor slightly, but it's not really that important of a role. We are there for the area of effect. By this point, you really should have the well, somewhere around here you should have your Herald of Ice and your ring equipped with Cold Infusion. Probably not on Leap Slam because Leap Slam unlocks at level 22, but you should have it at least on Rolling Slam. Next we are going to take this two-handed tree. I would suggest getting the Singular Purpose first because it does give us a very large increase to stun build up and damage, and then go ahead and grab the Shockwave, which increases our area of effect. Moving on down, we take a right? We go north. Then we are going to grab Raking Blows, which increases the stun build up and increase area effect again. And we're going to grab Resolute Technique. Around this time, you will have access to Leap Slam, and you will be clearing incredibly well through Act 2 at this point. We're going to continue and grab this arm here, grabbing Honorless, which is another incredible bunch of nodes here. As you can see, increased melee damage against immobilized enemies. Now, heavily stunned enemies are classed as immobilized enemies. That means we are doing 50, 20, 20. So that's 90. Let's see if there's another one. 90 extra % damage while they are heavily stunned, which of course stacks with our more damage against heavily stunned enemies. You can see how this is now escalating quite quickly. Next, we want to grab this little stun arm here. This is our first point of armor break. It's not incredible, but it does help us a lot. If we do happen to heavily stun and they are still alive after the first heavy stun, and then normal packs or rare packs, they will have a lot of their armor broken, which means they take even more damage from our attacks. This one is a fun one. Flip the script. Recover 20% of your life when you heavy stun a rare or a unique enemy. This is great for boss fights and great for killing rares in maps. Good stuff. Over here we start to take the area of effect circles. We're going to grab the impact force, increasing stun build up and area damage, and the impact area, increasing area effect if you stun an enemy, and of just a flat increased area effect of attack. So basically 30% when we are just running around, because we're going to be constantly stunning. Continuing north, we want to grab Battle Fever. This is the only physical damage arm that I am aware of. So this boosts our overall cold damage when we do a perfect strike. Great stuff. Moving over, we grab some elemental nodes. I would suggest grabbing Sigil of Fire and Sigil of Ice first for a larger boost in damage output. As I mentioned earlier, Perfect Strike guarantees an ignite on hit. That means we are going to be doing 30% increased damage with hits against ignited enemies after we have hit them with the first Perfect Strike. This is great when we are bossing. Over here at the sigil, which is exactly the same thing, we are chilling everything and they get an increased 30% damage. We're going to continue up and grab cold natures to increase our chill duration and cold damage as well. Good stuff, great elemental stuff there. Moving on up, we are going to grab even more stun build up. This is a very large chunk of stun build up, and we're going to be noticing the majority of the enemies would just be stunned at this point. You're not going to have a whole lot of issues with anything that you have hitting you back. Lastly, on the north side of the tree, we are going to grab the chill circle, which increases the magnitude of our chills and the duration. Also, the last node increases the freeze build-up, which is super handy for our perfect strike. Going back down to the bottom here, we're going to be pretty close to maps at this point. So we are going to want to just keep on the path of increasing our stun and damage output. We're going to go ahead and grab the Crushing Verdict. This is 5% reduced attack speed, but increased stun build-up and 50% increased attack damage. That is a massive boost to our damage output. Over here, we're going to go and grab that Skull Crusher, which is that 20% more damage against stun enemies with maces, which of course stacks with these two nodes, bringing up to 100%. Again, we go ahead and grab a stun build up node. This one here will increase our strength by 5%, which is great for extra health. Now we are going to increase our elemental resistances max. We're going to go ahead and grab these nodes to increase our fire resistance. As I mentioned before, this bad boy here will allow us to convert 40% of physical damage taken as fire damage, which is actually absolutely incredible. Now, if I understand this correctly, that means 40% of physical damage is taken as fire damage, which is then hit by our fire resistances, reducing the incoming damage even further. An absolutely amazing armor piece. And it's kind of sad that we have to use this instead of armor. I really hope GGG fix that really soon. But that is why we grab these increased maximums. Now you may have noticed that we have 4 dual sockets that we can use. And what we want to do is grab jewels with the 1% to 2% maximum fire resistances. You want to aim for over 80%. To allow us to really mitigate a lot of that incoming damage. And then just finally, we go ahead and grab the 40% increased damage with hits at close range, which brings that up to 70% increased damage at hits with close range as our final level 75 passive. So this build will take us to 75. Once you are done with this, I was just aiming for what you feel you need. Perhaps getting increased area effect, maybe increasing your attack, maybe adding some more resistances. This is the point where how you feel about the build comes into play more than the guide itself. Right, we have covered gear, we have covered skills, and we have covered passives. Let's get some gameplay going. I will leave you here. Once again, if this has been helpful to you, if you like the guide, please do leave a like, subscribe, tell your friends. Also, something I really should have mentioned at the start, there is a very detailed written guide. I will put it in the description and the comment section for your viewing pleasure. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.
Feel my wrath! Fortune favors me. Face me!